My story really doesn't have a beginning. There are fragments scattered throughout my whole life, moments of clairvoyance that I've never been able to explain. When I was a child, I had a neighbor who was rather old, and they were very sick, living out their last days in a house a couple houses away from mine. The night before they died, I dreamed of ambulances and watching my window as my neighbor was rolled out on a stretcher. I was 5 years old at this point, and I didn't know that this neighbor was suffering from such an extreme respiratory failure. I woke up sobbing to my mom and told her to go over to my neighbor's house and check on them. She soothed me back to sleep, telling me it was just a dream. But I woke up to sounds of sirens the next morning. I rushed to my window to see the exact scene from my dream playing out. For years, I have received visions, and I have had a connection to the spirit world. My parents are divorced, and when my father remarried and bought a new house with his wife, apparently the first thing I said about the house was that it was dark. I was 9 years old. In a house, I immediately felt the presence of 3 spirits: an old woman, a little boy, and something inhuman. The neighbor kids told me the house was built by a young man for his mother, who had bone cancer. He built it so that she could sit and look at the mountains from her bedroom. When she died, he apparently killed himself in our basement. His whole life was in that house, and he hadn't prepared for the worst. Her death overwhelmed him into a state of shock and depression, so he ran into the basement and ended it. Being the youngest of 4, I was stuck with the sick room, and for a while it never got bad. I knew the old woman was in the room, but she was never a menacing presence. I saw the old woman for the first time when I was 11, sitting in a chair in the middle of my room, staring out the window at the mountains. When my older sister moved away to college, we drew straws to see who got her room in the basement. At this point, I was 15, and the basement room was perfect for sneaking out among the other rebellious teenager things that you can do when your parents are sleeping 2 floors above you. I got the basement room, and for a while it was perfect. At this time in my life, I had pushed down all of my clairvoyant visions and sensitivity to the spirit world to make room for boys and school and musical theater. Every single night in that basement, though, I heard someone exactly at 2:47 a.m. run down the stairs and start running around the basement. The house was cheaply built on a hollow wood foundation, so every footstep could be perfectly heard. The basement was shaped like a horseshoe. My bedroom had 2 doors, one on each side of the horseshoe. For 15 minutes every night, I heard this person run back and forth from one of my doors to the other. I confronted everyone in my family about it because it woke me up every night, and they swore that it wasn't them. At the time, we had no pets because both of our cats had gotten out and never returned. But all the stuff that happened in my childhood no way compares to the story I'm about to tell you. I have no explanation for what happened and what continues to happen.
When I was 19, I was a summer camp counselor. It was a college prep summer camp, so it took place on campus in the dorms where there were night and day staff. I was night staff, meaning I made sure the kids got breakfast and dinner, ran any activities that took place at night, and had shifts staying up all night in case a kid had a late night emergency.
The nights where we stayed up dragged on for hours. They were incredibly boring because I was in charge of 8th graders, a group of kids that rarely had emergencies and were too rebellious to ask for help if they needed it. One night, one of my fellow counselors came to my room with the Ouija board, and we decided to play with it. This hall, we'll call it Gordon Hall, was rumored to be the place of many suicides, so we figured we'd have to at least get something out of this Ouija board. I knew I shouldn't mess around with the board, but at the time, I was so bored that I would really do anything. We played with the Ouija board. Nothing really comes through until we begin to say goodbye. All of a sudden, the planchette flew to the letter N and then the letter A, and back and forth between these two until my friend, we'll call him Paul, forced a goodbye. Paul and I looked at each other afterwards and laughed. "Mama?" Paul said sarcastically. "That's really funny, Morgan. It's pretty fucked up to bring my mom into this." He flipped the board and stormed out. I was completely confused because it wasn't me controlling the planchette. I was also confused about why Paul reacted so extremely to the word mama. Sure, we were camp counselors together, but we weren't super close. At the time, I didn't know that Paul's mom had died in a car accident only a few months ago. It was nearing 3 a.m. and Paul, the only other counselor on duty, had abandoned me. I pulled out my laptop and was scrolling on YouTube when I found a channel called Live Sci-Fi. From what I saw, this channel mostly did live Ouija board sessions, attempting to contact the Ouija board demon, most commonly known by the name that starts with Z. For my own safety, I prefer not even to say that name. I watched a few videos and realized it was 7 a.m., time to make sure the kids were up and ready for breakfast. I woke all the kids up, and we left Gordon to go to the dining hall. A pretty dark feeling was lingering over me, one that I hadn't felt since last time I was at my father's house. But I brushed it off, and I put my camp counselor smile on and sent the kids off to classes. 9 to 11 a.m. was usually nap time. I went back to my room with my roommate Katie. We both put our headphones in, and she fell asleep immediately. I went onto YouTube and clicked the first thing that was recommended to me. It was a Ouija board demon video. I fell asleep pretty quickly and woke up to the sound of 3 knocks on the door. I look over at Katie's bed and she wasn't there. I figured she had locked herself out, going to the bathroom or something, and I opened the door. No one was there, but my stomach dropped. Something felt really, really wrong. I have felt so much in my life. Every building I enter, I can usually tell what kind of energy is there, whether it be spirits or something else. But I've never felt something this dark. I closed the door and crawled back into bed. I don't know if I was asleep or awake when I heard this, but I heard the 3 knocks again, and someone outside my door yelling my name. It sounded like one of my girls, so I rushed to the door and threw it open. Again, no one was there, and I was looking at an empty hallway. I decided nap time was over, and I started working on plans for activities for the kids. I chugged a Red Bull and thought nothing of it. That night, I was blessed with not having the night shift. I got in bed right after our nightly 10:30 meeting and fell asleep immediately. Katie was also not a part of the night duty, so we were both in the room. This part of the story has only been told to me as I was dead asleep. Katie says around 3 a.m. I leapt out of my bed screaming my head off. I fell on the floor and I was pointing at my bed screaming about a bug under my pillow. I was saying, I know he's there, the bug is there, I know he's there. I was screaming and crying, and Katie got out of bed and looked under my pillow. There was nothing there. Katie grabbed my hand and led me back to my bed, showing me there was nothing there, and that I was just having a nightmare. I guess I calmed down and I went back to sleep. The next morning we did our routine, got back to Gordon at 9 a.m. for nap time, got in bed, watched another live sci-fi video, and fell asleep. I woke up 15 minutes later because it felt like my pillow was moving. I lifted it up and I kid you not, a scorpion was crawling from behind the bed, under my pillow. The part that was so unnerving about this was that I live in Colorado, where it is incredibly rare, if not impossible, to see a scorpion. I have lived in Colorado for 21 years and I have never once seen a scorpion except for that day. Something was seriously wrong. That was the last super extreme thing that happened at camp, but since then I have suffered from nightmares every single night. At night when I'm alone in the dark, the energy feels darker than it used to. I've always had something following me, but a close friend who practices as a medium has told me that it's my grandmother watching over me. It doesn't feel like my grandmother anymore. The craziest part is that 2 nights ago I was coming home from work pretty late. My family locks the front door after 9, so I had to go through the garage. I opened the garage and looked down just in time to see a flash of black run past my shoes. I turned on my phone flashlight towards it, and guess what it was? A scorpion.